Sugar was once a prized medicine, revered for its healing properties, sold in apothecaries at exorbitant prices, before its insidious transformation into the cheap, ubiquitous poison we navigate today. Its journey from a rare, exotic cure-all to the silent architect of modern disease is a profound saga, a bitter irony woven into the very fabric of human history. This story begins not in a bustling market or a colonial plantation, but deep within the humid rainforests of New Guinea some 8,000 years ago. Here, the ancestral sugarcane, a tall, reedy grass, grew wild. Early inhabitants discovered that chewing its fibrous stalks released a burst of sweet, invigorating juice. It was a simple pleasure, a natural energy boost, and for millennia, that's all it remained. A local delicacy, a source of quick vitality. From New Guinea, the cane traveled across the Pacific, carried by ancient seafarers to Southeast Asia, and eventually, around 4,000 years ago, to India. It was in India that sugar began its slow, deliberate climb from a mere chewed cane to something more refined. Around 500 BC, Indian metallurgists, experimenting with purification, figured out how to crystallize the juice. They boiled it down, separating the sweet solids from the molasses, creating the first granular sugar. This new substance, crystalline and portable, was immediately recognized for its unique properties. It wasn't just sweet, it was thought to be a tonic for a range of ailments. Ancient Indian medical texts, like the Sushruta Samhita, prescribed it to combat thirst, aid digestion, and even promote strength. It was a medicinal wonder, carefully measured, expensive, and reserved for the sick or the very wealthy. The Western world first encountered sugar through the eyes of conquest. In 325 BC, when Alexander the Great's forces marched into India, his admiral Narcus reported seeing reeds that produce honey without bees. This curious substance made its way back to Greece and Rome, but in minuscule quantities, traded alongside other exotic spices like pepper and cinnamon. It was a botanical curiosity, an ingredient for high-status dishes, or, crucially, for the apothecaries who saw it as an invaluable component in various remedies and elixirs. Imagine a Roman physician carefully weighing out a few precious grams of crystallized sugar, an ingredient more akin to a modern pharmaceutical than a pantry staple. The true expansion of sugar's influence arrived with the spread of Islam. In the 7th century, Arab armies conquered Persia, inheriting their knowledge of sugar cultivation and refining. The Arabs, brilliant agronomists and traders, embraced sugarcane with fervor. They perfected cultivation techniques, developed sophisticated irrigation systems, and more efficient methods for extracting and crystallizing the sugar. As the Islamic Empire stretched across North Africa, through the Middle East, and into Spain, so too did sugarcane. New plantations sprang up in Egypt, Syria, and on the islands of the Mediterranean. Sugar remained a luxury, a symbol of status, and an essential part of medicinal preparations, used to sweeten bitter concoctions or preserve delicate fruits. It was an elite indulgence, often presented as elaborate sculptural centerpieces at royal banquets. Europe's real taste of sugar, beyond the scattered imports of antiquity, came through the Crusades. From the 11th to the 13th century, European knights and pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land encountered vast sugar plantations in regions like Syria and Lebanon. They brought back tales of this new spice, incredibly sweet and invigorating. Venice, with its powerful merchant fleet, quickly established itself as the gateway for sugar into Europe. The Venetian trade routes ensured a trickle of this precious commodity made to the continent, but it remained astronomically expensive. A single pound of sugar could cost as much as a new book or a day's wages for a skilled craftsman. It was still the exclusive domain of royalty, the nobility, and of course, the apothecaries, who still prized its supposed healing powers. For centuries, sugar remained locked in this dual role, a potent, expensive medicine, and a status symbol. European attempts to grow sugarcane on a significant scale in places like Sicily and Cyprus met with limited success. The climate wasn't quite right, and the labor required was immense. This geographic and climatic barrier preserved its exclusivity, its allure, and its medicinal mystique. But then a new age dawned, an age of exploration, and with it, the stage was set for sugar's dramatic and tragic transformation. In 1493, Christopher Columbus, on his second voyage to the New World, brought sugarcane cuttings from the Canary Islands to Hispaniola, present-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. This was the turning point. The Caribbean offered an ideal climate, abundant sun, fertile soil, and plentiful rainfall, a perfect crucible for sugarcane to thrive. Initially, attempts to cultivate it faced challenges, particularly with labor. The indigenous Taino population, decimated by European diseases and brutal exploitation, could not sustain the backbreaking work required. This labor shortage, coupled with the burgeoning European demand for this newly accessible luxury, opened the darkest chapter in sugar's history, the transatlantic slave trade. Beginning in the early 16th century, millions of enslaved Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic to work on sugar plantations. The conditions were horrific, beyond comprehension. Cultivating and processing sugar was one of the most brutal and dangerous forms of labor known. Slaves toiled under the scorching sun, hacking at cane with machetes, enduring the screams of the mills where limbs were routinely crushed. The average life expectancy on a Caribbean sugar plantation was terrifyingly short. Sugar wasn't just a commodity, it was a driving force behind an unprecedented human sacrifice, creating immense wealth for European powers while costing countless lives and untold suffering. The sweet crystals that graced European tables were quite literally drenched in blood. As production soared in the Americas, sugar's price began to plummet. What was once a rarity for kings and healers became increasingly accessible to the emerging middle classes and eventually even the working poor. This accessibility wasn't accidental. European powers, particularly the British Empire, recognized sugar as a powerful economic engine. Tea, coffee, and chocolate, newly popular beverages imported from around the globe, created an insatiable demand for sugar. It transformed from a standalone luxury into an essential accompaniment, altering tastes and diets across an entire continent. The Industrial Revolution only cemented sugar's new role. Factory workers, toiling for long hours in grim conditions, needed cheap, quick energy. Sugar, added to their tea or coffee or baked into rudimentary cakes, provided just that. It was a readily available calorie source, a fleeting comfort against the monotony of their lives, and a way to make bland, unappetizing food palatable. It was no longer a medicine for the sick, but a fuel for the industrial machine, a cheap indulgence, and a widespread addiction in waiting. Its reputation had fully shifted from medicinal rarity to an everyday foodstuff, albeit one built on unimaginable human misery. If the hidden history of everyday foods like sugar fascinates you, consider hitting that like button and subscribing to Breaking Bread. There's a whole world of stories waiting to be uncovered, and your support helps us continue these deep dives. By the late 19th and early 20th century, sugar began its silent takeover of the processed food industry. As packaged goods became prevalent, manufacturers discovered that sugar wasn't just a sweetener, it was a powerful preservative, a texturizer, and a flavor enhancer that could make even the most uninspired ingredients appealing. It found its way into everything: breakfast cereals, canned soups, breads, sauces, and almost every processed food imaginable. The sugar consumers added to their tea was one thing, but now a vast amount of sugar was being consumed unknowingly, hidden within products marketed as convenient and modern. The era of hidden sugar had truly begun, transforming our palates and our diets in ways we couldn't yet comprehend. As sugar consumption exploded, a quiet alarm began to sound. By the mid-20th century, scientists and doctors started noticing alarming trends: a dramatic rise in obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. Was there a connection? Initial suspicions pointed fingers at dietary fat, largely due to influential figures like Ansel Keys and his diet heart hypothesis. However, a dissenting voice emerged: Dr. John Yudkin, a British physiologist. In his 1972 book, Pure, White, and Deadly, Yudkin argued forcefully that sugar, not fat, was the primary culprit behind these escalating health crises. He meticulously detailed how sugar metabolism differed from fat, suggesting its unique dangers. But Yudkin's warnings were largely dismissed, even ridiculed. Why? The immensely powerful sugar industry, recognizing the existential threat posed by such claims, actively worked to undermine his research and shift the blame. They funded studies that implicated fat, promoted their own biased research, and launched sophisticated public relations campaigns. This was not a simple scientific debate, it was an information war. And for decades, the sugar industry, with its vast resources, effectively won. They successfully convinced the public and many health authorities that fat was the enemy, leaving sugar largely unchallenged as it continued its pervasive march into every corner of the diet. What other common food do you suspect has a darker history than we realize? Share your thoughts in the comments below. You might just inspire our next deep dive. Today, the scientific consensus has largely vindicated Yudkin. Decades of independent research have revealed the profound and detrimental effects of excessive sugar consumption. We now understand that sugar, particularly in its refined forms, isn't just empty calories. It's a metabolically active compound that can wreak havoc on our bodies. It overloads the liver, leading to fatty liver disease. It contributes to insulin resistance, a precursor to type 2 diabetes. It fuels inflammation, impacts brain function, and even has addictive qualities, triggering dopamine releases that compel us to consume more. This isn't about avoiding a single granule of sweetness, but understanding that the sheer volume of sugar in the modern diet, often hidden and unavoidable, is a primary driver of a global health crisis. So, what does this epic journey of sugar mean for us today? It means we live in a world where a substance once considered a rare, precious medicine and a symbol of wealth has become an omnipresent, cheap ingredient that is actively undermining our health. It's in our coffee, our bread, our yogurt, our sauces, even our healthy snacks. Disentangling ourselves from this pervasive influence is an immense challenge. It requires a fundamental shift in awareness, not just about what we eat, but about the historical forces that shaped our food landscape. Sugar's story is a stark reminder that even the sweetest things can hide the bitterest truths, and that the history of an ingredient is often far more complex and more impactful than we ever imagine. From the remote jungles of New Guinea to the brutal Caribbean plantations, from the exclusive apothecaries of Europe to the hidden recesses of every supermarket aisle, sugar has undergone an astonishing transformation. It began as a revered medicine, transitioned into a brutal engine of empire and slavery, and ultimately, in its modern, ubiquitous form, emerged as a slow, silent poison. Its story forces us to look beyond the immediate taste, to understand the profound historical, economic, and human cost embedded in every sweet crystal. It reminds us that history isn't just about dates and names, but about the very ingredients that shape our world and our health. If you found this exploration into sugar's dramatic transformation compelling and want to continue uncovering the hidden stories behind the foods we eat, subscribe to Breaking Bread. Join our community as we peel back the layers of culinary history, one ingredient at a time.